Hello, welcome to Lights Camera Conversation with me, Sam, and David. So everyone owns a subscription to a streaming service or an on-demand service, and we bet that you're probably going to be sat on the sofa at some point this summer just chilling out and watching TV. So we thought we'd give you some of our summer streaming recommendations and also some of our summer streaming don't go there recommendations to help you kind of identify what to avoid so you don't put loads of time into something that's particularly quite bad. So let's get right into it.
Oh yeah, it's a tricky time, isn't it? Like the cinema is still not clear when they're going to be open. Was it Christopher Nolan's Tenet was meant to be the big thing that kicks it off, but that date keeps pushing. So generally everyone's left with stuff to stream, whether it's things that are easily available. There's a big difference now, isn't there? A big thing since basically this new genre of stuff of premium video on demand, things like Trolls World Tour and Scoob have come out. So also that's a bigger option. I know some people I know isn't it like £10-15 for that rental for like 24 hours, and they've said they've watched it about 16 times in that thing anyway. So that's also something that people can go for. I've not done that myself, but we have got some ones we can talk about here. Something old, Sam. What have you been watching? We've got our something old, something new theme.
I watched. I don't know if you really call it old as such. It's because it's had a new season this year, but it started in, I think it was 2014, 2015. Sorry, 2017. So a long way off. But I watched Ozark. I binged all of Ozark on Netflix. Which, for those of you who don't know, it's essentially starring Jason Bateman as this dad who ends up becoming embroiled in this money laundering scheme, and him and his family have to go live in the Ozarks to essentially partake in this scheme, otherwise they're dead. And it's very Breaking Bad. That's probably the biggest comparison. It's not as good as Breaking Bad, but it's way up there. It's really good. And the later season 3, was amazing. It's very heavy stuff. Like, you watch it and you can, just from like the color scheme and how it's graded, you can tell this is going to be pretty dark, and it is. But there's a lot of comedy because Jason Bateman's a comedian and he directs a lot of the episodes as well. There's a lot of comedy to it as well, so it's not all doom and gloom. But it's very tense, very atmospheric. It's funny, and you'll be wanting to watch. You'll want to binge it as soon as you can, as much as you can.
Yeah, I've only seen the first season. I don't know how I've not got round to the latest ones for some reason. But yeah, I remember the first one. I did enjoy it. Yeah, just like you said, it's got very Breaking Bad type vibes to it. That's what I really liked. I can't remember much about it, actually. All I remember is basically the first episode where they have to move there to a totally unknown alien place to them. From what is it? They've moved from the city, don't they? And have to move to basically Holiday Lake.
It was like the Ozarks are like kind of like our Lake District, I guess. And they have to like get their fingers in businesses and start laundering money. But there's always going to be something that's kind of being a barrier for them, and they've got to get over that barrier. And there's a good twist and a turn, and stuff doesn't go right for them. And it's a dangerous world they're in with like this, Mexican cartel that they're laundering for.
That's it. Yeah, I remember now. It's coming back to me. But yeah, every episode it just escalates into more and more. They get into more and more trouble, more danger, more threat.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable, but it's still like. It's like I said, it's got comedy to it. Like it's not all doom and gloom, and there's a lot of. It's kind of like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad was a very tense show, yet there was a lot of comedy. There's a lot of silly moments, and it finds a tone really well. It doesn't feel like too overbearing when it does do a whole comedy bit. It doesn't hit you over the head with it. It's normally quite subtle, and I think that's what Jason Bateman's quite good at doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? He's kind of mainly known for comedy roles, and suddenly go to this kind of dark thriller drama with dark comedy in it. It's quite a shift, but he does it really, really well.
Yeah, it's really impressive. It's definitely worth a watch. I mean, it's 3 seasons up now. They've got one more season left. That'll be well, whenever this is all over and they get back to filming. But definitely worth a watch, especially if you're a Breaking Bad fan.
Well, it might sound an obvious question then, so what would you give it out of our kind of rating system? Is it good, bad, or was it ugly?
It was good. It was really good. Absolutely. It was really high up there.
Excellent. My turn, something old. It's actually quite old, I'd say. So I have been watching, in our household, I actually finished it last night, all 7 seasons of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We'd seen them all before, long time ago. We noticed that, was it a couple of months ago, they were on E4 advertised. Started watching it on there. It's also, then I suddenly noticed it was on Amazon Prime without adverts, so ended up watching it from there, but it's still on all 4, so you could watch it, anyone can watch it at the moment for free. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. How do I summarise that? It was based on a film from 1992 that was kind of written again by Joss Whedon. It came out not very successful, and they developed it a couple of years later, or 5 years later, into this TV series starring Sarah Michelle Gellar. Title kind of gives it away, isn't it? It's Buffy. She's one of, it's hard to explain, isn't it? I'm trying to think about it. If you don't know what Buffy is, how do you explain it? Yeah, Buffy's the main character. She is a vampire slayer. So there's basically the town she lives in. It's basically a hellmouth underneath. So there's all sort of vampires, monsters, demons. It's actually, watching it back again, I appreciate it a lot more. It's very well written. All the story arcs for all the characters and the main big bad character, the main bad guy of each series. It does have a really good arc throughout the series, as well as the, really like the odd comedy episode or Monster of the Week's episode that's stuck in there as well, but it still keeps that overall arc of that season and driving characters' kind of progression of their character forward as well.
Yeah, I've never properly watched it. I watched 2 episodes with my uncle when I was a bit younger, because he really enjoyed it. And I quite liked what I did see of it. And I was obviously younger, so I don't remember it too much. But I know it's very successful. It's one of those cult hit shows, isn't it, that everyone goes back to now and again. And Joss Whedon's kind of a big influencer, I suppose, in filmmaking and TV and stuff, like Firefly and all that. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those big. It is a big show. Just never got around to it.
I mean, it takes a lot of genres. So it's supernatural, horror, comedy, drama, teen drama. A lot of people kind of pull a face when you say teen drama, but that is kind of really kind of one of the sub genres, as it were. Yes, action, fantasy. Yeah, I think the issue with is kind of series like this back. Kind of from that time, late 90s into kind of the 2000s, it's like there's series like this where there's 22 to like 24 episodes, and you'd think half of them are just kind of a bit meh, a bit drab, and you're like, no, you'd think this would be a lot better if it was more like, 12, even 16 sounds a lot, because a lot of series kind of haven't they the last 4 or 5 years. Can't think examples like Game of Thrones, like any Netflix original series, Stranger Things, where I think it's also maybe a bit more down to budget, but it is quality over quantity. Not having to have an episode to come out every week for like the autumn winter season to being on TV. I guess that's sort of the shift, isn't it, from the pattern of something being every week on TV, or nearly every week, to having it come on streaming service where they'll just put the whole season on in one go and you can just binge it in that first weekend. Yeah, one thing we liked with Buffy is the characters are all really likable, the main ones. So that's why I think you stick through the not so strong episodes. There are some really, people might have seen bits of them or watched some of like really standout episodes are Once More with Feeling, which is a 100% or nearly 100% musical episode where a demon comes in and the whole town, instead of speaking, they have to sing. So the entire episode is everyone singing, but it's not just singing for the sake of it. It's making them being completely honest with each other. So if people in each other's relationships with each other are actually being honest through song, So it resolves a lot of things that have been building up for quite a long time. So it isn't just monster of the week and make everyone sing. There's a lot of story and a lot of stuff is resolved, and then in the following episode, a lot of people go their separate ways. Or it's a really big shift in that season. Another one that people might have seen is called is the Hush, where these demons take everyone's voices away, so no one can speak. So the whole episode is not speaking. It's basically a silent episode. I remember reading something about it recently, saying Joss Whedon he got sick of people like critics saying he relies on just lots of witty banter and quips to get through an episode. So he's like, okay, I'm going to write one where no one speaks and just prove everyone wrong. So they were two, I think, the best episodes out of the 100 odds. The one where no one speaks and then the one where everyone sings. So if you're just going to watch 2 episodes, I'd say people hunt out those. So it's Hush and Once More with Feeling.
Awesome. Generally, you've really intrigued me there, because I like it when shows will go off the beaten path and do that kind of one-off episode where it's a little bit bizarre and not like itself. They're always really good ones.
Yeah, so that's Amazon and currently all 4 on demand. Sam, anything else old you've been watching?
It came out last year, so it's not too old, but I watched it recently. Kind of same with Ozark, but it's another TV show, and it's coincidentally got Jason Bateman in it, and he directed the first episode. But it's a Stephen King adaptation called The Outsider, and it's just a limited series that was on HBO. You can watch it on HBO Max, I believe, and it's available on Amazon, I think. But this is it's. I mean, if you know Stephen King, you know what he's about. It's kind of hot, it's horror. And I'd compare this to it. It's essentially about this man Jason Bateman, who is wrongfully accused of murdering this little boy, as he's seen at the scene of the crime. However, he wasn't in that place. The guy says, I wasn't there. I have proof. I was at this conference, blah, blah, blah. And the detective, played by Ben Mendelsohn, who's amazing in this, is just, he can't fathom it out at all. And he ends up getting this other detective in, played by Cynthia Erivo, who's also amazing in this. And the two of them have to crack this case. And it's Stephen King, so it's a bit supernatural. I think the thing with this show is that it starts off really good. It's really tense. The mystery's there. You're really, really haunted. However, about 4 episodes in, they start to unveil what the thing is. And at that point, you're like, oh, okay. It's like that whole thing in horror, show, don't tell. And that's what the problem with the series is, because if you're left, because in the second parts, the second and the last part of the series, it doesn't feel as horrific or tense. It's still entertaining, but when you know what the thing is, you're like, oh, okay, cool. It just feels like a kind of like a Scooby-Doo thing where they're trying to find this monster. It doesn't feel as tense as it did. And it's by no means bad, but it definitely lacks. It's worth a watch, I would definitely say, because the mystery of what it is quite good, but it feels like it could have been a lot shorter. That's what I'd say.
So where have you been watching that? I've not heard of this.
HBO. Well, it's on HBO Max and Amazon. We watched on Amazon. Right. I don't think it's on there anymore, though. I think they took it off and I had to pay for it, so we got in there quite quick. But it's interesting. It's a limited series. It's worth a watch. Like I said, it's very grimy. It's very dark as well. It hits all the beats of a Stephen King story. I'd compare it to it in terms of what the enemies are quite like. And the characters are brilliant as well. They all have to go for the personal demons and stuff. And Jason Bateman, as I said, he directs an episode or 2. And he's in it as well, which is good. So, but as I say, I think that's the problem. It has a really, really good star-studded cast, and all the acting is amazing. It just feels like they reveal it a bit too soon, and because of that, you end up being like, okay, I know what it is now, and it starts getting a bit fillery. Like, oh god, it's dragging on a bit. I've not read the book. I'm a big Stephen King fan, but I've not read the book, so I can't really compare it to that. But now there's rumors there's going to be a second season, and it's like, why?
Is that or just be made up? I guess not Stephen King, as it were, or is it?
I don't think so. No, I think it's just the one book. There's an end credit scene, and it's a bit like at the end of the season, and it's a bit like. But I think what's really good about it is it's left ambiguous without spoiling it, because for anyone who wants to watch it, but it's left ambiguous, and it's quite nice. It's like, okay, it could be leading to another season, but it's also it's closed quite well. The door's closed really well.
You just reminded me of one of your other favourite series on Netflix, 13 Reasons Why, about how the first season is really good. It's based on a book, so it's not obviously word for word, but you've got this huge amount of text for a source material, and then the second season, because the first one did well, like, oh, quick, we got to make a second one. Oh, but there's no book, so we'll just get all our writers together and come up with some stories quickly, and how that just doesn't work as well when you've just got a book. It's kind of like Game of Thrones, isn't it? They had all the books the first few seasons, and then they just got ahead of him writing the books, so they kind of had to just not make it up, but it wasn't coming from the author, so it's just not as good in general. So it's not for everything, but that's quite a common theme, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can tell when, like, I know Game of Thrones is a good example. You could tell when they stopped following George R. R. Martin's books. The writing just wasn't to that standard because they didn't have his input. They weren't going off anything that was already pre-written. And I think that's my fear of a lot of things. It's like, just do the one book and leave it. People will like it. But I guess that's not the way that Hollywood and stuff works. So, but yeah, I'd put this in my. It's good. I'd say it's worth a watch once, but I would never go back to it. I think that's the thing. So I wouldn't say it's bad, but in this, we'll put it in the bad category, I feel.
So another two. Well, I'm going to do a slight combo of two old things that kind of relate, quite similar to each other. Recently, I've watched two films. One on Netflix, which is Dante's Peak, and one on Amazon, which is Twister. So two kind of natural disaster 90s action films, which I remember quite fondly seeing at cinema and seeing it on TV after, but obviously not for a long time. It's like, let's watch these again. Dante's Peak. The one thing that really stood out for me of how good all the special and practical effects are in this film. It's hard, the odd, visual effect of it's not that perfect, but the special effects is incredible. Like, must have done so much practical work, huge teams to do. There's so many buildings get destroyed. Obviously, lots of lava, smoke, ash. As I'm sure there's lots of rear projection stuff going on as well. Because there's some things going, wow, how did they do that? That's totally seamless. And that's kind of the main thing that stood out to me of how good the effects were. And then I just looked. Then I looked like, did this get nominated for an Oscar? Actually, it didn't, because it was up against that same year, 1997. Starship Troopers, Titanic, and Jurassic Park: The Lost World. So it had some tough competition there. Anyway, let's get back to more of the story on visual effects. Two main stars, Pierce Brosnan, who at the time he'd just become James Bond, I think. It did GoldenEye the year before, and Linda Hamilton, Terminator films, most known for. So it's Pierce Brosnan's character. He's a volcanologist. Vulcan, volcanoes, not Star Trek. So he's got a lot of experience of being in bad situations where volcanoes were exploded before. So he works for what's they called? USGS, United States Geological Service. So if there's any spiking activity, some dormant volcano, they'll go and give it some checks to see if it's okay. So they go to check this really rural mountain town. Where Lyndall Hamilton is the mayor, so he does various tests. He believes, because he's seen it all before, that this is going to explode, the volcano is going to blow, where everyone else is saying, no, it's fine. Because he said we've got to evacuate the town, and of course no one wants to believe him, because the whole town, they're their council, all think, no, we've just had lots of investment, we're not going to go anywhere just because one guy's come up and says, and then of course he's right, and all chaos breaks loose as the volcano starts to erupt, and that's what it becomes a big crazy adventure film. So it's very 90s, where I think it's the same as Twister. Those sort of films all kind of have the same look. It's like they're all shot by the same cinematographer.
I've never heard of Dante's Peak. I've heard of Twister. I think everyone's heard of Twister, but I've never heard Dante's Peak. I've not a clue. But I've not really watched any of the old like disaster movies. I guess you could maybe put Independence Day in there.
It was that sort of time in those 3 or 4 years they were in there. It's got a similar, but I think you compare. Also, Independence Day is again one of my favourite films. So yeah, it's definitely in that category. But yeah, this is really good. I think action, disaster film. I'm looking at kind of how it didn't make much money. I think it came out like January, February time, so it wasn't like a summer film, which I think obviously dents films like this. This definitely feels like when I thought back, it's like, this definitely came out in summer, and then no, it came out. Yeah, I'm looking at now 7th February. It's like, I guess that was a busy summer trying to compete with Jurassic, Lost World, Starship Troopers, and Titanic, and so on. What else? Twister at the same time. I watched that the other day, and that I don't think the visual effects held up at all, and it kind of really took me out of it. And there's so much, and the characters seemed all really annoying. I mean, I like Bill Paxton rather. He's really good in it, but yeah, that was no way as good as I remember. It was like the other way around. It seemed to be. I felt like Dante's Twister was the stronger one at the time, but watching back, it's like, Twister, it's not very good. It does have a young Philip Seymour Hoffman in it, playing some sort of stoner guy as part of their team. He's quite amusing. But yeah, if I kind of to rate those, I would definitely say Dante's Peak is definitely good, and unfortunately I put Twister in the kind of the bad category.
Cool. Well, I'm going to talk about something that's an absolute stinker now. This is quite a new film. It's a Disney Plus original. Well, I say original. I don't know. I think they plan to release it in cinemas, but then obviously global pandemic. Artemis Fowl, which is just not good at all. There's nothing winning about it. I mean, I only watched it. I never read the books, but I only watched it because I really like Kenneth Branagh as a director. I think he's really good.
I like some stuff he's done.
Yeah, and it's got a reasonably okay cast. It's got Colin Farrell in it, who I absolutely adore. Judi Dench, can't go wrong. And then you've got Josh Gad's growing on me a bit. I liked him in Murder on the Orient Express, which was a Kenneth Branagh movie, and that's like the only film I actually quite like him in. So I was like, okay, well, if there's another Kenneth Branagh film he's in, I'll give it a go. And it was just horrible. It was just not a good movie. I think the problem with it is I mean, it's a kid's film, but I do not see a kid liking this at all. I think they'd be bored through it, to be honest. It's the acting's just horrible, and I think that goes for every single person, especially the main kid who plays Artemis Fowl. I think he was absolutely dreadful. It was just so boring, and I think it's half the film just takes place in this one mansion, his mansion.
But you look at the trailer, and it looks in lots. I'm kind of looking at it now, just on IMDb. In fact, it's got 4.1 out of 10 average. It doesn't look good.
I wouldn't even put it there. I mean, it's based on this book's about this kid who becomes like this supervillain, and he's like, there's like an underworld of like loads of creatures like fairies and stuff and all this. I don't know too much about it, but from what the film kind of described was that this underworld of fairies or something, and his family's special and stuff. And but I just couldn't follow it because I was just like, I'm so bored, and that was the problem. And I think a lot of people, I mean, one of my friends, he read the books, and he said the problem with it was that in the books he's a supervillain, but he's the protagonist. And it makes it interesting. Whereas in this, he's more of a hero, and apparently Disney changed it because they wanted him to be more likable. And it's like, well, it's like, no, keep it. Why would you do that? It's like, that makes it interesting that he's a supervillain. It might have given it a bit more flair. But in this, it's just like a big CGI nightmare with really cringy acting, really cringy dialogue. There's just nothing entertaining about it. It's like I said, it's set in this one place. It never really moves along. There's no stakes or anything. It feels like it's a film that probably came out in like the early 2000s, but we kind of went under the radar. It feels like one of those movies. It doesn't feel like a 2020 movie. It doesn't feel like And I think that's the problem. It got put on Disney Plus, and everyone just really didn't like it. I thought it was terrible, and it's a shame because I really like Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, I guess maybe why they did it. Wasn't it filmed like a few years ago, and it was kept being delayed for trying to fix it or whatever reason, and then it's obviously because everything's happened. It was due to be released like in June, wasn't it? And it's like they must have thought, this is not very good. This was not going to make much money when the cinemas are back, so let's just literally dump it on Disney Plus and make it look like it's much bigger thing than it is. Like, but if something it was made for Disney Plus, you'd think would you kind of forgive it a bit more? So it was made for streaming rather than made for cinema.
Well, I think what had happened was they'd made it, but it was under the Fox name, 20th Century Fox, and then Disney bought 20th Century Fox and stuff.
All right.
And so they were like, "Oh, we've got to get this out." And I think they were going to release it in cinemas, and they were just like, "We're not bothered. Let's just stick it on Disney Plus." Which I imagine if it was I don't know if it would have done worse in cinemas, to be honest. I thought people wanted something new to watch, and I think it would have done better on streaming, which it has been watched quite a bit, but I reckon cinemas it might have tanked a bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, when it came out a month or so ago, I thought everyone was straight away saying, "No, this is a real stinker." It's like, okay, even though I've got Disney Plus and I could just flick through it, I'm just not going to. I'm not going to give them that extra view.
I wouldn't. I mean, that's a big warning. Don't put it on, even if it's for your kids. Your kids won't like it. It's not a good. There's plenty of other old Disney movies you can watch on there that are far better than that. And if you like Kenneth Branagh, watch Murder on the Orient Express, the newer one. That's a really good movie. Or even like the first Thor movie, he did that.
And Cinderella, which is also on Disney, the live action one from 4 or 5 years ago. He directed that, and that's pretty good. Yeah,
I've not seen that. But yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, that was the first of the new wave of let's do a live action of our old back catalogue of animated films.
Because we're lazy. We have no original ideas.
Yeah. My turn for something bad, is it? Something bad and very disappointing has been on Netflix, The Sinner Season 3. I don't know what has happened there. I mean, the first 2 seasons, it's kind of it's all about this grisly, dishevelled kind of old detective played by Bill Pullman who investigates these very unusual cases. So each season is about a different case. The first 2 were pretty good, and suddenly this third one is I don't know what they've been doing. It's just completely different, and it just feels so absolutely unbelievable and not realistic. And I'm just trying to just force myself to watch it, going, what is he doing? It's this character. He wouldn't do that. He didn't do this in the other series. Why is he doing it now? The police wouldn't do that. This is just. I mean, you've got to give it some credit how it does come and go back and forth, revealing stuff, but you kind of know who the bad guy is instantly, and it just reveals too much straight away. And the guy goes out on like some crazy bender in New York, and he ends up just going with him all night just to keep tabs on him, like joining in. And at home, he's got a wife who's just had a kid, and it's just I just can't. I don't know if I can finish it. I think I watched 4 or 5. I know there's only 8. I'm like, what a massive drop in consistency and story and character from the first 2.
I've seen it advertised, and I really, really like Bill Pullman, and I was intrigued at first because I think he's a really good actor, and it looked like one of those. When I saw the trailers, it looked like a very Ozark style show.
It is, yeah. It is, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I've not watched it. But knowing you said that makes you like, I don't know if I feel like watching. If it's not got like that longevity, I don't know.
I said the first 2 seasons, which were still on Netflix, are really good, but this third one, I don't know what. It's just totally so different. It's like a completely different team have come in and done it. You don't really know what they're doing. It's like, oh no. But I've seen now making a 4th one. It's like, maybe it can redeem itself by there. So I don't know. It's just kind of half and half, isn't it? Now it's like, I think you could still watch the first 2 and skip the third if they made a 4th. Like there's not much that carries on from his story. Like I think he's something to do with his ex that comes up a few times in the second season, but they are kind of quite self-contained. But yeah, season 3 of The Sinner is really, really ugly, and if you haven't started it, I would skip it.
That's a shame because I do really like Bill Pullman. I think he's a really good, he's a really underrated actor. So hearing that's a bit.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of sings praises a bit more in the first few seasons. Like, he's investigating these kind of this grisly, very bizarre crime, but he also has his own issues with his health, his marriage, and kind of his own sanity for one reason or another without spoiling anything. So there's a lot of layers to that. But then you get to the third one, and it kind of skips a lot of that. About it's not really about him. It's about this guy that he's following. It's just who seems really unrealistic, all the things that he'd end up doing. Well, sticking on back to Disney Plus, I've watched twice this last week is Hamilton, the filmed version of the Broadway show that came out, it was like 5 years ago now. So Disney acquired the rights to this film, the filmed version of the original Broadway cast earlier this year. I was reading that they paid $75 million for the rights to have this, which is it's like a record for the rights of something that already exists. So that's quite a thing. Disney obviously really wanted it. They're up against Netflix and Amazon and other studios like Warner Brothers, I was reading. Yes, it's the filmed version of the stage performance. It was filmed actually 4 years ago with the original cast, 2016. Filmed, there's 3 performances, obviously edited together to make it look like one, because there's lots of scenes and lots of things going on with with like a steady cam right up really with them, looking over people's shoulders on the stage. And obviously you can't film that when an audience is watching, and there is an audience watching because you do hear them react and laugh and stuff and clap at various points where they would do, which kind of makes it, which really works, I feel. It's quite a long musical. It's about 2.5 hours, obviously divided into 2 acts, like most musical theatre or stage performances are. So basically depicts the life and career of Alexander Hamilton, who was an orphaned immigrant from the Caribbean islands, who ends up arriving in New York. So he ends up fighting with kind of General George Washington in the American Revolution. And it does cover kind of 30 years of his life in this 2 hours. And it's really interesting of that period of the American Revolution, and then how he became Secretary of the Treasury of the United States. And the main theme of it is really about his friendship with other character called Aaron Burr, of how they started off as friends and they helped each other, and how they almost pretty much became enemies by the end of it, that ended up in literally a gunfight duel at the end. It also tells it really cleverly with friends that he made, a story about his wife and his child. So it's all intertwined, really clever. Obviously, it's 100% musical, so everything's sung. But the main thing that stands out to other musicals, it's a lot of rap and hip hop, along with lots of traditional musical theatre. It's some of the singing is so quick. I was reading someone saying that if the amount of lyrics that are said in this are spoken or sung in this, if that was in a normal kind of musical, then it would be about 6 hours. So it just shows you how much content of words are done in that 2.5 hours. It's really interesting stuff how the rap kind of develops. Like the rap at the beginning is very slow, and how that develops as the characters develop, how it becomes early rap to more modern rap. Some characters sing only in musical theatre style.
Wow. I really like the American Revolution. Like I love my history. And I had no idea it was based around that. The name Hamilton didn't even click. So that's interesting. I just never looked into it. I just heard it was a popular thing, but I just kind of was like, it's a musical. I don't mind some musicals, but whatever. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of musicals that I end up watching because my wife is involved in musical theatre and opera, and a lot of things, musical theatre and opera, I struggle, it's things to do with how my ears are tuned, to struggle to understand of what people are singing when it's like, especially opera. But for this, it seems to be I can hear pinpoint every word. I don't see because a mixture of rap and modern music, hip hop, even with traditional musical theatre.
Wow, I might have to give it a go.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I didn't know. George Washington was the general, fighting, and he was leading them. And then second half of Act Two is then obviously George Washington is now president. It covers such a big time span, but does it so well, and you don't really notice because a lot of times that the date is said beginning of a song, and you're like, okay, a little bit of time has passed. Oh, okay, a year's passed, or 6 months have passed. Like a whole year battle is just summed up in 30 seconds. It is a really interesting history lesson and really catchy music.
I was gonna say, I guess a good one for us to wrap up on might be something we both watched and both really like, because What We Do in the Shadows season 2.
Oh wow, yeah.
I mean, I absolutely adore the movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and then they adapted it into a TV show last year. And season 2 came out, and I binged it last week on BBC iPlayer, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think I've got 1 or 2 to go, but yeah, I'm just smiling and laughing the entire way through.
It's just so silly. It's essentially a mockumentary style, like The Office and such, where they talk to these vampires in America. It's got Matt Berry, what's his name? Phone Jacker guy, Kevin Novak. I think that's his name. And I can't remember the actress's name, but she's been on 8 out of 10 Cats and stuff. So it's really good. It's really good. It's done by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, who did Flight of the Conchords and obviously Jojo Rabbit, Thor Ragnarok. Taika Waititi's kind of made us a big name for himself, and it's just balmy. It's just so stupid things going on. They play with a lot of different horror tropes and stuff, and they tend to comedy. I love the idea that one of their familiars is going around killing vampires because these vampires are trying to kill them. He's trying to save them and stuff, but he can't tell anyone because killing a vampire is an offense and stuff. And it's just funny how he's covering it up and stuff. It's just stupid. And Matt Berry's character. Have you seen the episode where Mark Hamill's in it?
Yes, where he gets to go off and has that bar.
Yeah, he just starts a new life because he owes some money to Mark Hamill, who plays a vampire in it. And he starts a new life in this bar.
It looks like he's been there for months, and then it just says 1 week later. You're like, wow, brilliant gag, just a little bit of text.
And he comes back, doesn't he? And Nando's like, oh, Laszlo's just saying, you're not happy to see me, I'm back. And Nando's like, well, you're only gone for a week.
I've said welcome back. What else do you want me to say? Yeah, things like, I just love it. Literally every line and everything that happens on screen is just, or visual gag, is just constant.
See, I was worried because I'm such a big fan of the film. When I watched the first season, I was like, I really like the people who are in it. And I know Waititi and Jermaine Clement have done a couple of episodes, but not written all of them. I'm really worried they won't be able to capture the same magic, or it'll feel too samey. What I really like about it is the writing team's quite diverse. They've all got the different ideas, and they managed to keep it fresh. It doesn't feel like it's getting old at any point. And I feel like that's something I was worried about with it originally. And then I thought, well, season 2, and if they're going to run out of ideas. But no, they do keep it fresh, and there's a long running plot going on with the familiar and stuff, and they get it. They really, really pin it down really well. And there's some great guest stars like Mark Hamill and Craig Robinson.
Haley Joel Osment was in the first episode, wasn't he, of this second series?
Yeah, I forgot about him. And in the first season, they get loads of vampire, classic vampire actors in Wesley Snipes and Evan Rachel Wood, and then even Waititi and Clement reprise their roles as the vampires from the film. Yeah.
Tilda Swinton, I remember.
Oh, yeah. And Dave Bautista as well. It's such a silly show, and it's so accessible as well. It's got adult humor, and it's got quite silly humor. It's just ridiculous. One of the vampires he's not really a vampire. He's just he looks like an ordinary human guy, but he drains people with boring them and stuff.
Yeah, Colin, the energy vampire. I can't remember why he lives with them, but yeah, so he just drains the energy of humans and vampires just by boring them or frustrating them.
But he just looks like a normal guy, and it's Colin Robinson. That's it.
The best episode I think is the one just literally about Colin, where he gets a promotion at work, and it just gives him more power. Yeah, he allows him to drain people and even plants. He walks past a plant and it just dies.
it's just the sheer ridiculousness of it. You know, these are like these horrible monsters that kill and murder people, but you've got like a documentary team, human people, just following around everywhere.
Yeah, everyone just accept that there's a film crew following these vampires, and these monsters, vampires, and everyone's just there's a lot of death, but yeah, everyone just accepts it. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I think that's what the first film did really well, and I mean, that's a film I could go back to all the time. I think that's on Amazon at the moment. If you want to watch the original film, I think it's good to watch the original film then the series.
But what I felt really like about this series as well, that there's no CGI effects. Everything is practical. I remember really excited that they took inspiration from quite an old film now, early 90s, Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, where it wasn't really good CGI then, so everything was practical effects. So they did as much as possible do all of that in camera. So it is like a document. More, it is real because it's like supposed to be a documentary. So things like when things happen, it happens. Obviously, when he turns into a bat and stuff, that's CG. But I think the majority of it is. Yeah, that's currently on available on BBC iPlayer, isn't it? So you can watch those all, and they're all about 20 minutes. So yeah, like you said, if you binged it, you can watch. We can just over an hour. You can watch 3 of them, and there's out of 10, so you can a couple hours. You could watch it all. But I've been staggering it. Watch maybe 2 at a time. So I've got how many left? I've just watched, on the run. So there's about 4 left for me.
Awesome, that's really good. Yeah, worth a watch. And I said give the film a go as well because that's just as good. But yeah, I think that about wraps up. There's plenty of stuff to get for people to sink the teeth into there. There's stuff to not sink the teeth into as well.
Yeah, keeping with the vampire theme of today.
Yeah, that just totally went off my head. That
I thought it's been really clever. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I want. That's great.
Fantastic episode.
Fantastic. Yeah, really batting them over the head with these puns.
Yeah, back to our coffins
for slumber.
Yeah. until next time.
See you later, guys.